Hi, Lana. Thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's really good to have you on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Do you want to start off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and who's in your family?
Yes, so I am Lana Kearney. I have a quite an odd job. I work as a content coach, so I help content creators of all different kinds be able to grow their accounts, make money online, that kind of thing. I actually started this business when I was on maternity leave with my second baby, but I work from home. I have two small kids. I have a 5-year-old called Kit and a 2.5-year-old called Darcy, and then my husband as well in our family. So pretty sure our family is complete at this point. We've got two really great kids, don't want to rock the boat anymore.
It's all going smoothly. That's when you think, could a third make it better?
Yeah, every time the thought pops into my head, I have to mention it to my husband and he quickly puts the idea out of my head.
It's just within us, isn't it? We're like, maybe it would be better if we had more.
No, but I think it's that thing where you want to recreate the experience you had with your kids. It's not that you necessarily want another child. You just want to do that all again.
That's what I think women crit themselves with that third child, isn't it? It's like, is it the baby
Yeah.
they want, or do they want to relive the newborn phase? Do they want to relive the cuddles and the sleeping on you and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's it. I want a time machine, not another child right now.
The toddler phase is not easy.
Yeah, we're in the thick of it at the moment. It is, yeah, I forgot how wild it is.
So, Lana, we're going to try and get to both your births today, but we're going to focus mainly on your eldest. So, do you want to start off by telling the listeners a bit about your conception journey with him?
Yes, so I actually fell pregnant with Kit during COVID. I think I was going through that like whole COVID identity crisis, being like, what are we doing with our lives? And me and my husband decided we weren't married at that point, but we decided, okay, let's have a baby. We know we want to have a baby. We may as well do it now. Life's too short. All of that. We decided to start trying. Thought that it would possibly take a long time. I was always kind of worried about like being able to conceive, not for any reason, but I just had that anxiety. I think a lot of women have that. But luckily, we fell pregnant straight away. Like 2 weeks after we decided to start trying, I had a positive pregnancy test, and I was delighted, over the moon. Like, couldn't believe how amazing this was. Like, felt so lucky that it had come so easily. And to be honest, it was a great pregnancy. Like the whole way through, it was absolutely fab. I had quite a bit of sickness at the start for the first like 13 weeks, but other than that, I was like literally glowing. I was so happy, so excited because it was COVID. I was at home all day. Like I was working from home. It was just like it really was kind of perfect.
Sounds amazing. So, were you spending a lot of that time then researching, doing all the birth prep? How were you feeling in your head about going into birth? What had you kind of been told by like your mum and other women in your life? Did you feel like you knew what you were doing?
Yeah, I did a lot of research. I was like always growing up one of those women who was just like fascinated with pregnancy and birth and like really wanted to be a mum. I felt like I knew quite a lot about like physiological birth and how your body operates. And I did a lot of hypnobirthing. Like I did a course, I read numerous books, kind of prepared myself that way. I did like breastfeeding courses. I just spent a lot of time trying to soak up as much information as I could because I was so excited about it. I just wanted to learn absolutely everything. So I felt going into it, I was very, very prepared, maybe mistakenly.
Okay, good. I mean, I feel like I certainly did this first time round, right? You read everything, you're like, I am a pro. I'm going to nail this. You got the birth affirmations and you're like, yep, I know what I'm doing. It's all going to
Yeah.
go swimmingly.
Yeah, I was like in my bedroom practicing all my breathing techniques, being like, this is going to be no bother to me. And I think as well, because it was COVID and the care that we received in COVID was sometimes like better because your appointments were very quick. You weren't waiting around a lot, but there was no continuity of care at all.
Mm.
I never saw the same person twice. So I felt a lot of pressure to learn as much as I could to kind of make up for that. So I was just really trying to absorb every single morsel of information.
Were you then thinking a hospital birth was the way that you were going to go, given that it was your first birth and, during COVID, I suppose a home birth would have been tricky through the NHS anyway?
I actually had kind of wanted to have a home birth, but my husband was like, no, I would not feel like I would be so anxious. And in where I'm from, I was giving birth in a hospital that's really, really close to my house. And it has like a really good home from home birthing suite. So I was like, okay, that sounds perfect. Like I would feel really comfortable with that. So luckily I was midwife led because the pregnancy was very like simple. So that was kind of what I had planned. And even though I did kind of have birth plans in my head, I was also very, very open to absolutely anything as well. Like I knew that it's probably not going to go exactly the way that I wanted. But I knew what I wanted, but I wasn't sticking tightly to that.
But you felt like you knew the interventions that could happen if you needed to have them.
Yeah, I did a lot of research on all the different possibilities. I'd read a couple of really good books that like kind of talked me through, like episiotomies and forceps and ventouse deliveries and all of that. So I felt like I knew what could potentially happen and what I would say no to. And I felt like I'm not a very confrontational person. And I really had prepped my husband to be able to kind of advocate for me, like, this is what I definitely don't want, this is what I do want. But again, I was still kind of prepared for all of that to go out the window in the moment.
Gotcha. Do you want to mention anything else about the pregnancy, or should we jump through to the first signs of labor?
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of everything. It really was like, it was a great pregnancy. Like, we found out the gender like at about 17 weeks. I knew we were having a little boy. We were very, very excited. It was just like a really nice time. And every time I think about it, I'm like, God, that was amazing. I'm so lucky that I had that. I knew it could have been very, very different. I had other friends who didn't have it that easy. So I really tried to be as grateful as I could that I got the best experience.
And were you feeling a bit nervous going into all this during COVID times, like knowing that you would be giving birth in that situation?
That was kind of the only thing. So my husband couldn't come with me to a lot of appointments, which wasn't too bad, but I knew that during birth he wouldn't be able to be in the room until I was in like the delivery room. I knew that he would have to leave pretty much immediately after. I knew that we'd potentially have to wear masks the entire time, and that did give me anxiety and more kind of like anger and frustration because pubs were opening up, people were in bars watching football, but I was going to have to go through this alone potentially. But I do feel like that it was kind of easing off a little bit by the time I was giving birth, so I wasn't too worried.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I feel like I was so, you don't think about how lucky you are to have your partner like in the room or to stay over at night. Whereas I've spoken to so many women who their partners had to go home every night, or women who labored, had their entire labor with their husband not allowed to be, not even allowed in the hospital.
Yeah, I knew a few women who'd gone through that, and I was like, I really don't want that to happen. But, if it does, there's not much I can do.
Yeah. So what were your first signs of labor with him, and what gestation were you?
So I was 40 weeks and 3 days, and I'd had a sweep a couple of days earlier, and not too much happened. But then I was just like putting dinner in the oven, and as I bent down, I felt a pop, and my waters just went, and I was like, that's definitely 100% my waters, and I called the hospital. Went in, they checked it, they were like, yep, that your waters have gone. Like, if you have no signs of labor after 24 hours, come back to us, but if not, just go home, try and relax, and see how far you can get before you need to come in. So I was like, okay, great. Went home. That was about 6 o'clock in the evening. I didn't really have anything until I got into bed, and as I was kind of relaxing, then the contractions started. So I went downstairs, my husband was asleep. I turned down all the lights, watched TV, and just kind of managed the contractions. They were fine, like they were quite far apart. But as it maybe got to a couple, like 2 or 3 in the morning, I was checking my waters and saw meconium in the waters, and was like, they had kind of warned me, if that happens, like, to let them know. My mum had told me that that had happened with her birth with me as well, so I was kind of aware of it, but I wasn't really panicked. But then the contractions started really, really ramping up. So I called the hospital. They told me to come in because of the meconium. So I went there at about 8 o'clock the next morning. So at that point, I'd been laboring at home for 12 hours, maybe about 6 hours, where it was getting pretty intense.
Did you feel like you wanted to stay at home as long as you could because you were aware that like you may not get into a labor suite? Was that like, was your mind just like, I'm going to try and like last as long as I can?
Yeah, I was kind of happy to stay at home as long as I needed to, but as the pain kind of ramped up, and then when I called them and they were like, no, you need to come in. If there's meconium in your waters, we need to check it. And I was totally fine with that. And because we are so close to the hospital, it was just like, right, okay, we'll go over. If they sent me home, that's fine. It's a 2-minute drive down the road. So I went in. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning when I got in there. I was 2 centimeters dilated, but the meconium there was so much of it that they sent me straight up to a delivery room, and they actually allowed my husband to come in, which kind of wasn't the protocol at the time. They wanted to wait until you were in established labor, but they were like, no, it's fine. He can go on up. So we were up there from about 8 o'clock in the morning. and I was kind of laboring, and they wanted to put me on the drip, like the syntocinon, like the synthetic oxytocin. And as soon as I went on that, things ramped up to like an excessive degree. The pain was just completely unmanageable. And I was like, epidural, epidural now, as soon as I can get it. I tried the gas and air, and as soon as I took the first breath of gas and air, I vomited all over my husband's shoes. And we had just arrived, and it was a long labour, and he was there the whole day with like these disgusting shoes. He was so angry, but he was trying so hard not to show it. It was awful, but I was like, no, get me an epidural. I cannot deal with this. And luckily I did then get an epidural. It was kind of like midday maybe, and the relief that came with that was unbelievable. I had never been so grateful for anybody in my life.
It's quite a feeling when you get given an epidural, isn't it? You're like, the pain you feel ahead of that, and then the feeling afterwards it's so starkly different.
It was just like, I cannot describe that moment of joy when it started to kick in. It was just like such a relief, because to be honest, at that stage, I had gotten myself into a bit of a panic, and I was really quite spiraling over the pain. And that kind of gave me a little bit of headspace to kind of calm myself down a little bit, because I feel like if I hadn't done that, I would have got into such a panic that I couldn't have come back from it. So it did help even in a mindset way as well. But the only problem was with the epidural, I had to lie on one side. I had to lie on my left hand side because they couldn't get a good reading of the baby's heart rate. But I didn't know that that meant that the epidural would then not work down one side, because it essentially all pulled over to the left hand side. So even though I got that initial relief, it was only maybe about 20 minutes before I had pain on one side again, which I'll tell you now, it was pretty much the same as not having any epidural at all. It was so bad. But like that, it wasn't communicated to me that that could happen. And when I mentioned it to the midwife, she was like, well, obviously you're lying on one side, which then really bothered me, because I was like, well, how am I expected to know that? So I was like, that kind of then sent me back into a bit of a panic. But the labour it continued to go so slow. It went on into the evening. I was not progressing at all. It then got to midnight the next night, and I was begging for a C-section. I was like, nothing is happening here. I am in so much pain. Please, can I just have a C-section? And everybody was like, no, like, you can do this. Like, you're getting closer. There's no reason for a C-section. It's like an additional risk. But I was like, I think they just thought I was panicking so much that I could do it, but I knew in my head I was not going to be able to do this. I was like, I need to have a C-section, but they were like, no, that's not happening. They kept putting it off. They were like, we'll come back in an hour. If you still want one, then we'll let you have one. They would come back in an hour. I'd be like, yes, can I please have a C-section? The same thing would happen again. It would be like, well, we'll see if we have time. There's emergencies in. It got to 5 o'clock the next morning, and then I felt the need to push, and I then started pushing. And it was at that point when I was told that because there was so much meconium, that my baby was likely to come out maybe needing help or maybe somewhat unresponsive. That had not been communicated to me the entire time. And when it was just like, as I was about to push, I was like, oh my God, like, what does that mean? So then I was panicked, pushing him out. I was like, what's going to happen here? Luckily, he came out pretty easily. Like 20 minutes, he was out, no tears, no stitches. Like, I was so thankful for that. But he came out and it was not good. He was like completely unresponsive. He had to be then taken and like resuscitated, and it was very, very quiet in the room. And it was like 10 minutes of complete silence. And in that 10 minutes, because I had had like 30 hours of being completely panicked, in those 10 minutes something just happened to my brain where I just completely disassociated, and I couldn't access any emotion at all. I was just numb, completely numb. They did get him to come around. He didn't need any additional help, thank goodness. He didn't have to go to the NICU or anything like that. But by the time they handed him to me, I just was in like complete terror. I just looked at him and I was scared. Like, I was so frightened. When he opened his mouth and cried, I just looked, like, the fear in my eyes. My husband took a couple of videos and you can see the fear in my face. But I kind of was like, okay, everybody's alive, everybody's well, was trying to calm down. But then at that point, my placenta was not coming out. And I was made aware that this was going to be a bit of an issue. They had given me the injection to kind of like help release the placenta, help my uterus contract. It just wasn't coming out. The doctor had her arm up there. It was awful. Nothing was happening. And It didn't feel like too much of an issue, and I wasn't too stressed about it, but I could see a lot of commotion, like at the bottom of the bed. And then all of a sudden, I started losing a lot of blood. And then cords were pulled, people were rushing into the room, and I was signing forms and basically was whisked away. I didn't know what was happening. I like just knew that something bad was happening. I had to say goodbye to my husband. I was like, am I coming back? Like, I don't know what's happening here. But as I was being wheeled away, I had a nurse holding my hand and I was like in and out of consciousness. And I remember asking her, like, am I going to die? Like, is something bad happening here? And she kind of looked at me and she was like, we're going to do our best to keep you safe. And at that point, it was like lights out. I don't know what happened after that. But I know now in hindsight, I was having like a manual removal of my placenta, which no one should ever Google because it is not pleasant. But they did that procedure. I lost 2.5 liters of blood, and then I woke up 2 hours later in a recovery bay with the baby beside me, essentially.
Lana, wow. I was not expecting that to be the ending to that story. That must
Yeah,
have been
it was wild, and
terrifying.
it's funny because like I think a lot of people go through this where you're actually not really aware of everything that's happening, and like even though it was a 36-hour labor, it was a long time. It doesn't feel that long in my memory because there was so much going on, but it wasn't really till afterwards, like reading through my birth notes, that I properly learned everything that happened.
Mm.
And then was kind of a bit more shocked by it. But when I woke up in that recovery bay, I was having a blood transfusion and I was just like happy to be alive at that point.
Do they know? So the hemorrhage, to your
Mhm.
knowledge, was that because they had tried to extract the placenta and they couldn't get it out? Had they pulled a bit off and then that caused the hemorrhage?
I think so because up until that point, I had only lost, like I say only, but I had lost about 0.5 liter of blood and they
Yeah.
weren't too concerned. And then something happened and then it was just like endless blood. So I think something might have caused it as like, I still don't know what caused it, but I assume that
Mm.
that's what happened.
I mean, it's a scary thought, isn't it, that this happens, and the fact that you, as you say, kind of felt like you were transported out of your body.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you then developed like PTSD from that? Like what? So you wake up in the operating. Sorry, you wake up in recovery, and do you feel grateful or do you feel angry? Or you said grateful that you're okay, but like,
Yeah, the first emotion was like, oh my God, I'm alive. Like this, like I'm just so happy to be alive. But pretty much immediately, my husband was then told he had to go because of COVID. So I was sat there with this baby that I could barely hold. I was still having a blood transfusion.
so wild.
I didn't know what had happened to me, and my husband didn't really know either. And I was just like, I went straight back into that like terror, like disassociated, like couldn't. I looked at the baby and I just, every time I looked at him, I felt fear. Every time he cried, I was like, I don't know what to do. That first night, so we stayed then for a night in the hospital, and it was just honestly one of the worst nights of my entire life because it was just like, I didn't know what to do. I could not sleep. I hadn't slept for such a long time. He was obviously he had been through trauma as well, and like he was he just seemed really distressed constantly, and I didn't know how to console him, and it was just like horrendous. And I was like phoning my husband being like, I you need to come back here, you need to bring me home. I got discharged as soon as I possibly could and was like, I am out of here, I am never coming back to this place. It was just not a good night, and they did want us out pretty quickly because of COVID. They didn't want anybody staying in the hospital longer than they needed to, in fear that like somebody could contract COVID and get sick or pass it on or whatever. So I was thankful that I could get out pretty quickly. But in hindsight, I was so unwell that I don't know whether I should have been let out because I'd lost so much blood. I didn't
Mm.
know how much blood I had lost. I didn't know how that impacts you. I didn't know how that impacts breastfeeding until much later. I was just like given a couple of painkillers and told, off you go, enjoy yourself with your new baby.
And when you got home, I mean, how was your mental health when you got home? What was that postpartum experience like?
It was in the gutter. It was so bad. From like
Mm.
literally from the minute I gave birth, I just couldn't access any joy, any like anything at all. I was like trying to make myself feel excited and like happy, and I just couldn't. And the night then home after the hospital was really, really tough. I kind of know a little bit more now about like that night two fussiness that a lot of babies go through because they kind of wake up a little bit more. They start like wanting to be on you a little bit more. I didn't know about that. I was just like, why is this baby not sleeping? Why can't he lie down? Like, why he didn't want to latch, but he also didn't want to be off me. Like, just the and like normal way that newborns are. But I couldn't understand this. And I just, from that moment, just sank into like an awful depression. And I was very, very depressed until he was 7 months old. That's kind of when I was able to get a bit of help from the GP. I was able to get medication, get a bit of therapy. But it was, I think the birth, I do always think that I probably would have always ended up with postnatal depression because I have a lot of like hormone sensitivity. I would suffer from PMDD just kind of normally. So I do think that was maybe always on the cards. But I do think the birth really did not help, and it kind of set me up with the worst possible start to that.
Yeah, it's funny how the birth has such an impact on your postpartum. The difference, like even though you had ahead of your placenta being removed, you kind of had a good birth in
Yeah,
that.
like it was like it kind of in some ways quite textbook, it like I didn't have
Mm,
any stitches. I was able to like push him out. There wasn't much intervention needed. That kind of all went to plan. Apart from my mindset and my
mm.
anxiety, nothing really bad happened until that point.
Was there something in particular that happened to you that made you in that postpartum finally get help? Like, was there like a really like, because there might be someone listening to this going, oh, I had a birth like that. And actually, I feel how you feel right now.
Yeah,
What made you finally get help?
I couldn't recognize in myself that I had
Mm,
postnatal depression. I could not see it. My health visitor had kind of floated the idea, and I think she had mentioned to my GP quite early on, and I was like, I am not depressed. I'm not crying. Like, I'm not upset because I was still getting out of bed every day, but I had these intense feelings of rage all the time. I could not cope when I couldn't settle the baby. I would fly off the handle. I would get so angry. I couldn't sleep. I had really bad insomnia. Even when the baby was sleeping, I thought, well, there's no point in me going to sleep because I'm going to be up in an hour to feed him anyway. So I just didn't sleep. That made me completely insane.
mm.
I just wanted to escape all the time. I would sometimes like leave the baby with my husband and just get in the car and drive just to physically get away because I just like felt so trapped by everything. It was just this very, very claustrophobic feeling of being overwhelmed and touched out and just everything on top of me all at once. It wasn't the overwhelming sadness that I kind of expected postnatal depression to be. It was more the kind of rage and anger. But when my baby was 7 months, he got a really bad cold, and I could not deal with the anxiety of him having a cold. And I like, he was fine. It was just like the sniffles, but it sent me over the edge. And I just like had a really bad argument with my husband. He then, I think, phoned my mum, and I think my mum was like, you need to go and get help. Like, you need to call the GP. And I did the next day. I got put on medication, and within weeks, everything was different. I wasn't necessarily really happy and overjoyed, but I could manage. I got up in the morning and I didn't feel the dread that I had been feeling. The rage went away. I could see all these lovely little moments. I could see the baby for who he was. Like, I enjoyed being around him. It was just like much more acceptance of this kind of new transition into motherhood rather than the resistance that I had for the first couple of months. And like, I am so grateful that the medication worked, and it like just completely changed my life. Like, I don't know where I would be if I hadn't got that help. And I am so angry with myself for not like realizing that sooner, but I don't think I
Mm.
could have.
Yeah, and it's a bit shoulda, woulda, coulda. Like you can't run the simulation again, can you? To know
Yeah.
what it would have been like had you have got it day two. But I suppose it would have taken that long to figure it out anyway. Like you had to get to that breaking point.
Yeah, I think so. And now looking back on it and everything that's happened since then, I actually weirdly look back on that time with a real fondness and a lot of compassion for myself. And I feel like that, even though it was so difficult, that has helped the bond between me and my son. I feel like we have been through so much together that it has like made us really, really strong. And we have a relationship that is just like, it's not a relationship I've ever had with anybody else in my life. And I feel like we have this kind of special connection, and it has come from that. So I kind of try and see it that way, that I wouldn't have that with him if I hadn't gone through that.
I think that's so special. And I'm curious, Lana, you don't have to answer this, but just for anyone listening who's maybe thinking, okay, they want to go on that kind of medication, like
Mhm.
is the transition off it hard, or are you still on them? And like, what is that like? Because I know people hear about,
Yeah.
antidepressants and they think, oh, they're so addictive. Will I never get off them? Like,
So I was put on a very low dose of sertraline, and it took about 4 weeks for it to properly work. And the doctors had warned me, like, this could be a difficult 4 weeks. You could feel worse before you feel better. And I was kind of prepared for that, but that didn't really happen. I started to feel slowly better about 2 weeks afterwards, and it just kind of gradually improved. And by 4 weeks, I felt completely different. So I was very lucky I didn't have that experience. I stayed on the antidepressants for like maybe about a year until we decided to try for a second baby. By that stage, I felt like I could come off them, and I did come off them really successfully. I have since gone back on them because I felt like I needed them, just kind of in that like having a young toddler phase. But I am very much I was quite resistant to it, and I felt like, oh, I don't need that help. I don't want to be taking chemicals that will interfere with my brain, even though to anybody else I would tell them take that medication if you need it. But now I fully accept that if I need to be on medication for the rest of my life to maintain the quality of life I have now, then I am absolutely fine with that.
I think that's such an important message. And I hope that anyone listening to this is the same. I have people very close to me in my life who have recently started taking antidepressants, and they have said similar things, that like they're going to be on it for as long as they want to be on it, for as long as they feel good on it.
Yeah, and I think I came off them last year because I felt really good, and I felt like, oh, I don't need these anymore because I'm really happy. And then when I came off them, I realized, oh, it was the antidepressants that were making me feel good. I do need these consistently. So I have just absolutely no shame, and I feel like in taking any medication now at all, and I just feel like this has saved my life. It has helped me be a better mum, and I'm lucky that they worked for me. I know a lot of people have a bit of trial and error. I was able to, like, the first kind I took worked for me. I will not mess with that formula again.
100%. It's like if you've got a headache, you would take a paracetamol. So
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
struggling in your mind, why do we not treat it the same way?
Yeah, it's just, I think sometimes you feel like, well, I'm not sick enough. Like, there's people who are worse off than me. Like, I should be able to deal with this. And it's like, well, everybody's not built the same way.
We're like, you would know this working in social media. We live in a society where we're constantly being stimulated. We're constantly being pulled from side to side. We're constantly like more, consume more, do more, be more, work more, parent more, mother more. And it's like, it's so much on your brain.
Yeah, and I think when you don't have a lot of support, which a lot of people don't have nowadays, it like where you don't maybe have family or help, you kind of it's a lot of pressure to take on.
I feel that.
Yeah.
So Lana, I'd like to touch just on your second birth story a little bit, if you'd like to share more on that. Do you want to tell us about conceiving your little girl? Was she planned? And what's the age gap again?
Yes, so when my son was 2, we decided to start trying for another baby because I knew I needed another one. And see, to be honest, I felt like I needed another chance at birth again because it had not gone the way I planned. I felt like I just needed a do-over, but I wanted another child. So when he was 2, we decided to start trying. Again, it was pretty quick. I think it took like 1 or 2 months before we conceived her. And it was the pregnancy with her was so vastly different to my son. It was like so bad it was comical. It was like I was so sick. I was sick from the minute I found out until the day I gave birth. I was just horrendously sick. I ended up taking allergies like to random things. I was covered in hives all over my face, all over my body. Because I was throwing up so much, I had broken like capillaries all over my face. My hair was falling out. My skin was breaking out. I got gestational diabetes. I had to take insulin. I ended up allergic to the insulin, ended up with welts all over me. I got gout somehow. The doctor had never heard of this. He was like, how have you got gout in pregnancy? I was like, I don't know. I did end up depressed in the pregnancy as well. I was off my antidepressants. I was in touch with oh my goodness. It was just, I feel so sorry for anybody who was near me in those 9 months because I complained from like the start until the end of that pregnancy. I was miserable to be around, but I kind of knew that it's going to be over soon. This is kind of farcical how ridiculous this is. But I got married as well when I was 8 months pregnant.
Oh my God.
I was like injecting insulin on my wedding day. Like it was just like horrendous. It was just, oh my goodness. I don't know why. I made that choice as well to get pregnant at 8 months or to get married at 8 months pregnant. So that was a choice, but it was a ridiculous pregnancy. But because of what had happened before, I chose to have an elective C-section. I
Hmm.
was very, very afraid of something bad happening again, and I had kind of convinced myself that something bad would happen again. And I just felt like I need as much control as I can possibly have here. And also because I had gestational diabetes, she was measuring quite big, and I had been like warned about the risks of shoulder dystocia, and that I was kind of being pushed towards a C-section anyway. I don't know why, because it just kind of felt like they wanted me to, and I kind of wanted to, so I was like, right, I'll book a C-section, and that was like fine. And I had her just after Christmas in 2023, and it was honestly the most incredible experience of my entire life. It was just like, I can't describe how good it was. I didn't have an ounce of fear. I had a friend who had had a C-section a couple of weeks before, and she told me that the only regret she had was how nervous she was during like the procedure. And I took that from her, and I was like, right, I am going to choose not to be anxious. And because that had really ruined my experience of birth the first time, like my anxiety, I was like, right, I am choosing here. I am not going to feel that anxiety. I'm not going to let it ruin anything. And I was just so calm. We had like our wedding playlist on in the background, and it was just like all the lights were kind of like as dim as they could be, like, and it was so nice. It was so lovely. And she was born, no complications, came out like crying her head off, like big loud squeals. And it was just like amazing. And I really felt like, as ridiculous as it sounds, the moment she came out, I felt completely healed from what had happened before, like completely healed. I like, up until that point, I couldn't even talk about my previous birth. I couldn't mention it I couldn't watch anything on TV that had any birth complications. I would have panic attacks. Now I can talk about it with like so much ease. I don't feel in any way emotionally triggered by it. And it was just from that second experience of like, oh, like this is how it could have been. This is how I got to have it the second time around. It was so healing. It was just like amazing. It was so good.
I think what's so special about what you've just said there is that so many women have a traumatic experience. Well, the women that do have a traumatic experience
Mhm.
often go searching for their second birth to transform them, but they're searching for that, vaginal physiological birth.
Yeah.
And you've achieved that with a C-section. So like, I think I want anyone listening to this who's like, if they have a similar birth to you, or if you feel like that way during your birth, you don't have to go and have an unmedicated vaginal birth second or third time round to heal from it.
Yeah, like I did when I first got pregnant with my daughter, I did want to have like another vaginal birth to kind of redo that, like you said. But as I was like talking to the consultants, because I was consultant led the second time around because of the complications, because of the diabetes, that they were kind of so insistent that I had a C-section that it actually kind of gave me a bit of relief. And I was like, okay, right, that's what I'll do then. I don't have to make this choice. And I knew that the relief that I felt at them mentioning it was a signal that that's actually probably what was best for me. And I didn't know that a C-section could be like that. I thought it was going to be very like surgical, like it's going to be very official. It's not going to have that magic to it. But it really did. Like everybody in the room was just like so happy. Like the anesthetist was like singing away to our birthing playlist. It was just like not what I imagined.
And did you have any preferences in the C-section aside from like your music and stuff? Like, did they do delayed cord clamping, or like, was she allowed to stay on you for longer, like anything like that?
Yeah, so they lowered the curtain so I got to see her come out, which is something I never thought I would want, but we have like the most amazing pictures of her just being like lifted out of my stomach. Like it really, really
Wow.
cool. And then yeah, she was put straight on me, skin to skin. I didn't want like they put a little hat on her, and I was like, take the hat off. She doesn't need a hat. So like I had her right on me, like, and it was just like that hour of them like stitching me back up was just it was so nice. I got to like hold her and like look at her, and it was yeah, it was really cool.
So she got to stay on you while you're being stitched up and all of that?
Yeah, and then I just like kept hold of her the entire time, got wheeled back to the recovery room, and I just like it was so nice. It was just lovely. Like the whole experience was completely different. She was just on me, like breastfed her the whole time. Like yeah, just much
Oh.
easier.
And I guess your husband, could he stay? Because it wouldn't have been COVID.
Yeah,
Was
so
it
he
COVID?
stayed for it. No, so it was much longer. It was like 2023
Yeah.
when that happened.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking short, wet
he
truth down the line.
Yeah, he got to stay, and then because we had my son at home, he went back and kind of spent the night with him. But my mum was up, so he was able to come and see, and my son was able to come to the hospital to meet her, and it was just like a totally different experience. And I just like so grateful that I got to do that so differently the second time around.
How did you find your recovery from a C-section?
I was very lucky. It was incredibly straightforward. I had no issues at all, no issues with my scar, like healed all very well. I didn't have like any really bad pain or anything afterwards. Like I was able to manage fine on just like paracetamol. And that was something I really didn't expect because I'd heard a lot of horror stories. I had very
Mm.
much prepared myself for like complications or like, not being able to move and walk for a long time afterwards. And it was just like, I actually found it a lot easier to recover from than my vaginal birth. Like after I had my son, I couldn't walk properly for a really long time because I had like injured my pelvis during birth. And I didn't know about that. It was like 6 months later when I was like, I'm still walking with a limp here. This is maybe not good. But like with my C-section, it was like
Mm.
absolutely fine. But what I didn't do the first time around was I didn't properly prioritize rest. But the second time around, I did not move unless I had to. I was like, I had the baby on me, people could come and see me, but I was not moving. And that made a huge amount of difference. I did not realize that the most productive thing you can do after you have a baby is to just sit down and take that rest.
That's such a good tip, especially because we all know what it's like when you've got one baby and then you have a C-section.
Yeah.
And I've had friends who just didn't take the rest. And now they're having much longer term issues with like muscles that haven't healed and things that have pulled. And it's like, you need to just realize that the dishes can wait. The toys can stay on the floor. You don't need to wipe every surface over. You can just like let someone else do it.
Yeah, like definitely I was like, I'm not prioritizing anything else other than just staying alive at the moment. And I do think that really paid off. Like it just was a lot easier. But I was quite lucky. My husband, he was able to take quite like about a month, 6 weeks maybe of paternity leave and like annual leave. So he was around a lot. My eldest was in daycare like during that time.
Mm.
So we had a lot of time and space. Family came up to stay and help, so it wasn't as chaotic. And like my husband really, he took absolute like 100% care of my son at that time. He was like
Mm.
looking after the house. He was just like, you just stay where you are, like heal while you can, and I'll do everything else. And that just like we had had a big conversation beforehand to orchestrate that because I told him what I needed. Like, this is what I need from you to just be able to have a good time here. And that massively helped.
I think that's so key. And someone said this to me the other day in an interview, and she said, what I kind of regret the most and wish that I had have thought of is the logistics of the postpartum with your partner. So who is owning what? Who's expected to do what? So that you don't get into your postpartum and go, well, I thought you'd look after, I told them what, I thought you'd do the dishes. I thought you would just own this area. And like, I think that's so key. We focus so much on the birth, but then we don't really think about what can happen in your postpartum and how that can affect your relationship if you don't have those conversations.
Yeah, it was even like really simple things like I'm gonna need 40 minutes every single day to go and have a shower and get ready and
Mm.
feel good. So you need to take 40 minutes where you're doing nothing but holding the baby so I can actually have a break. So it was even just those
Mm.
tiny little things like I need to be able to like go and get a coffee at this time. Like I need to have a bit of space to do this. It just made life an awful lot easier. And like we did really manage that, like the minutiae of like those plans, we tried to manage as much as we could because I knew from the first time that's not something I considered either. And I didn't realize that you can build a lot of resentment, a lot of silent resentment if you're not very clear about that. The only thing I kind of do regret is I breastfed my daughter exclusively and I co-slept with her, and I didn't really give the opportunity to my husband to be able to like put her to sleep or maybe feed her a bottle. And that meant for the first year of her life I was the only person that could console her, the only way of getting her to sleep. So that meant I did not have a lot of freedom for that first year. Like I
Yeah.
was just glued to her 24/7, and that was hard at times, but a very minor kind of thing. If I was going back, I would maybe change that slightly. But still, then at the same time, it was lovely because we had a really nice, close little bond in that first year.
So I actually know all about this. For anyone listening, Lana, I don't know if you still have the account, but you used to have a kind of mum account on
Yes,
TikTok,
yeah.
which I followed. And I remember following your breastfeeding journey quite closely because I was dealing with the same thing. So my boys
Really.
never took a bottle. And I spent like the first year of both their lives trying to get them to take a bottle. And there's a certain feeling of like feeling grateful but trapped when you're the only one that can feed them, but knowing that like you know that you're always accountable. You know that you always need to be a certain distance from them. And like depending on how much they fed, but like my baby's always fed on demand. And like my second was a big baby. He fed a lot. He fed frequently. Like up until 10 months, he was feeding every hour in the night. And I always say this to people, and I'm still going to say it because it's still one of my regrets, is that I would get them on the bottle sooner. I know that there can be nipple confusion and I know that they can reject the breast. In my mind, it's a risk that I'm willing to take that I wish I had done
I
it.
think I wish I had done that as well. Like I our breastfeeding journey was so good and so smooth and so straightforward. But at the same time, I knew I had to like protect my mental health as well, I guess.
Mm,
And I feel like the on-demand breastfeeding was not always the best thing for my mental health because I had to be on all the time. So I think I maybe would have given her a bottle because she was the same. She was just on me constantly. It was like all through the night. She was one of those babies where she could only fall asleep while she was latched to me. So I had to like wait until she was asleep and then get her off, and then she would wake up and we'd have to start the whole cycle again.
terrific.
And she would just latch all night, like, and it was painful. Like it was just like
Mm,
it was so annoying. But at the same time, when I look back now, because we stopped breastfeeding when she turned 2, that was like the last time I breastfed her. It was on like her second birthday, and now I'm like, oh my god, I miss that so much. That that kind of feeling of closeness. I'm like, oh my goodness, wasn't it so nice?
I mean, both my breastfeeding journeys ended with severe biting.
Oh
So
yeah, that was kind of the worst bit. It was like, which actually she like it was like a twiddler. She would like twiddle my other nipple while she was feeding, and it made me sick with rage. It's like,
yeah,
when did
yeah,
this
yeah.
happen? But no,
I,
it was like lovely though.
I can resonate with that. And Lana, I'd like to finish this episode speaking a little bit more about what you do, because you put something out on social recently and you kind of spoke about how your motherhood journey impacted like what you do now. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you've built for yourself? Because I think it's super inspiring.
Yeah, so when I was on maternity leave with my daughter, I started posting content on TikTok. I have always worked in social media and I wanted to like maybe get a better job after maternity leave. And I thought, okay, I'll upskill myself by making content. And I grew my account really, really quickly. I was like making money from it. I was like, oh, like maybe there's something in this that I could do. And I had a lot of friends who were content creators and they were kind of asking for help with their accounts. So I started helping them, kind of sharing the social media knowledge that I learned throughout my career and was able to help other content creators. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe there's a business in that. So I started sharing more content creation tips, and that just kind of accelerated and grew to the point where people were asking for help and asking me to give them strategies and content plans and that kind of thing. So I basically kind of accidentally grew a business on maternity leave, which was very, very difficult. It was very intense, and I like it did take away a little bit from the end of my maternity leave where I started focusing a
First or
bit
second
more
mat
on
leave?
work. That was second mat leave.
Yeah.
So it was just a very intense time, but it has kind of paid off now. I like this is what I do for a living. I was able to leave my job, build a business coaching content creators. I now have the Content Club, which is my community for content creators. There are, I think, 10,000 people have signed up and joined. We have over
My God.
7,000 people active in the community. It's like it's grown into this incredible thing that I just love doing so much. But it was a lot of it was born out of the need of like me wanting to make a bit of extra money on maternity leave, wanting to help other mums be able to like make a bit more flexible income, stay at home with their kids, you know, maybe reduce their childcare and their working hours. So it's all kind of come a bit full circle with that. You know, it started
Mm.
on my maternity leave and now I help a lot of other mums do the same thing. I help kind of everybody in all niches, but when I know I'm helping another mum create content and build a business from that, it feels kind of special because that's what I was able to do for me, and I like being able to pass that on to somebody else. But yeah, it's an interesting business and it is a good business to run with 2 small kids because I do have a lot of flexibility and you know I can be there for drop off and pick up every single day and spend a lot of time with them, which is really nice.
On the flip side, being an entrepreneur and a business owner, you would know that you're never off.
Yeah, that's the only I have had to put in a lot of like boundaries to keep that work life and family life separate. I don't like my kids seeing me on my phone. Like, I don't want them to be there if I'm ever recording videos or anything like that. So I like to kind of keep that separate, but that has been it's been a juggle. It's been a hard
Yeah. Are
juggle.
you good? Are you good at putting your phone away with them then, and like kind
I
of?
am now. I have a work phone and a personal phone, and the work phone just goes in my drawer at the end of the day when I pick up the kids. So I have no notifications on my personal phone, so I don't have to be distracted by that. Now, I am still checking my personal phone every now and again. It's not as if I'm sitting there with like no screens or anything like that, but it has reduced that, so I am a lot more present because there was a good 9 months there where I was not the
Yeah.
best mum because I was just so focused on trying to get away to do my work. And I just
Yeah.
realized it was affecting my family so much that something had to change. So, yeah, it's work to do that. And sometimes you kind of need those moments to make you realize what's important.
Lana, well, I like to finish each episode with this one question, and that is, if you have any words of advice or words of wisdom that you could impart on a mum listening to this, what would you say to them?
I think be kind to yourself in the postpartum period. I don't think, I think we know this consciously, but I think you really actually actively need to take care of yourself. You need to prioritize rest. You need to take help from people when it's being offered. Don't think people are just being kind. They genuinely want to help, and take the help when it's there, because that period is so crucial in the relationship you develop with your child, your motherhood journey. I think you need to be not just sit there and be passive. You need to actively put the measures in place to make sure that you get the rest and the support and the help that you need. If I wish I had done that. I'm glad I did it the second time. But if anybody takes anything away from that, that's the main piece of advice I would give.
Oh, that's amazing. And Lana, I'll make sure I link to everything in the show notes where they can find out more about what you do. But do you want to just let everyone know where they can find you and if they want to find out more?
Yes, if you search on TikTok, Lana TikTok coach, you will find me.
Okay, Lana, it's been amazing. I can't wait to find out more about what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Georgia.
Thanks. Bye.